Good day to you. Hope you're having a wonderful day. We've been reading in the book of Joshua. Last time we read Joshua chapter 7. And if you remember, that is about the sin of Achan and Israel being defeated at the city of Ai. And now we're ready to read chapter 8. And this again is the book of Joshua chapter 8. And this is going to be about the conquest of Ai. Now, I'm saying Ai. Usually, I would pronounce this city. It's spelled A-I, and a lot of times we pronounce it A-I because it's kind of awkward to see this little short two-letter name for a city. But the actual pronunciation, I've looked this up online, and I believe all the sources agree that it was actually pronounced I, as in your eye, or as in the letter I. So even though it's AI in the spelling is AI, the pronunciation, the correct pronunciation is I. So that's what I'm going to try to do moving forward. I may forget, I may slip up. Those of you who already knew this, you can kind of laugh at me and chuckle. That's good. It's all fine. So, but let's read Joshua chapter 8. I am reading in the Amplified Bible. Now the Lord said to Joshua, "Do not fear or be dismayed, intimidated. Take all the men of war with you and set out. Go up to Ai." See, I started to say Ai again. Go up to Ai. See, I have given the king of Ai, his people, his city, and his land into your hand. You shall do the same to Ai and its king as you did to Jericho and its king, except that you shall take only its spoil and its cattle as plunder for yourselves. Set up an ambush for the city behind it on the west side. So Joshua set out with all the people of war to go up against Ai. Then Joshua chose 30,000 valiant men and sent them out at night. He commanded them, saying, "Listen closely. You're going to lie in wait and ambush the city from behind it. Do not go very far away from the city, but all of you be ready. Then I and all the people who are with me will approach the city, and when they come out to meet us for battle as they did the first time, we will run away from them. They will come out after us until we have lured them away from the city, because they will say, 'They are running from us as they did before, so we will run from them.' Then you will emerge from the ambush and take possession of the city, for the Lord your God will hand it over to you. When you have taken the city, you shall set it on fire. You shall do exactly as the Lord commanded. See, I have commanded you." So Joshua sent them off, and they went to the place for the ambush and stayed hidden between Bethel and Ai on the west side of Ai. But Joshua spent that night among the people in Gilgal. So I want us to notice that Joshua is encouraging the people. Well, actually, the Lord is encouraging Joshua and the people, really, because he says, "Do not fear, take your men, go up to Ai." He's going to show them the difference of having him on their side, right? He's going to show them that he has given this land and this place to them. And so when they don't have that sin, the sin that Achan had, when they don't have that sin in the camp and God is with them, he's going to show them the difference that makes. And here he's also setting up a smart way to do this battle, to have this battle, right? They're planning, they're going to have an ambush. Joshua and the men are going to go up. They're going to start a fight, but then they're going to run away and draw the people, the other warriors and stuff out of the city to chase after them. And this is a smart military tactic to pull the people out so that then the city is undefended and those other men can go in and take the city. So, and we're going to see how that plays out. I'm sure you've probably read this before, but if you haven't, it's interesting to see this tactic being used, and it does work very well. So let's continue. Now Joshua got up early in the morning and assembled the people and went up with the elders of Israel before the people to Ai. Then all the fighting men who were with him went up and advanced and arrived in front of the city and camped on the north side of Ai. Now there was a ravine between them and Ai. And Joshua took about 5,000 men and set them in ambush between Bethel and Ai on the west side of the city. So they stationed the people, all the army, the main encampment that was north of the city, and their rear guard on the west side of the city. And Joshua spent that night in the valley. Now when the king and the people of Ai saw it, the men of the city hurried and got up early and went out to meet Israel in battle, the king and all his people at the appointed time and place before the desert plain, the Arabah. But he did not know that there was an ambush against him waiting behind the city on the west side. So Joshua and all Israel pretended to be defeated by them and ran toward the wilderness. Then all the people who were in the city were called together to pursue them, and they pursued Joshua and were lured away from the city. Not a man was left in Ai or Bethel who had not gone out after Israel. So they left the city open and unguarded, and they pursued Israel. Notice that Bethel was actually involved in this. I was kind of surprised to see that. I have studied this before, but I think I always forget that Bethel is also somewhat involved. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Reach out with the spear that is in your hand and point it toward Ai, for I will give it into your hand." So Joshua reached out with the spear in his hand and pointed it toward the city. The men in ambush emerged quickly from their hiding place, and when Joshua stretched out his hand, they ran and entered the city and captured it, and quickly set the city on fire. When the men of Ai turned back and looked, behold, the smoke of the city was ascending toward the sky, and they had no opportunity to run this way or that way. Then the people who had been running to the wilderness turned back toward the pursuers. When Joshua and all Israel saw that the men in ambush had taken the city and that the smoke of the city was ascending, they turned back and struck down the men of Ai. Then the others came out of the city to confront the men of Ai as they returned, so that they were trapped in the midst of Israel, some on this side and some on that side. Then Israel struck them until none of them survived or escaped. But they took the king of Ai alive and brought him to Joshua. When Israel had finished killing all the inhabitants of Ai in the field, in the wilderness where they pursued them, and they had all fallen by the edge of the sword until they were destroyed, then all Israel turned to Ai and struck it with the edge of the sword. And all who fell that day, both men and women, were 12,000, all the people of Ai. For Joshua did not withdraw his hand with which he stretched out the spear until he had utterly destroyed all the inhabitants of Ai. Israel took only the livestock and the spoil of that city as plunder for themselves, according to the word of the Lord, which he had commanded Joshua. So Joshua burned Ai and made it a rubbish heap forever, a desolation until this day. He hanged the body of the king of Ai on a tree, leaving it there until evening. At sunset, Joshua gave a command, and they took the body down from the tree and dumped it at the entrance of the city gate, and piled a great heap of stones over it that stands to this day. Then Joshua built an altar to the Lord, the God of Israel, on Mount Ebal, just as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded the sons of Israel, as it is written in the book of the law of Moses, an altar of uncut stones, on which no one has wielded an iron tool. And they offered on it burnt offerings to the Lord, and sacrificed peace offerings. And there in the presence of the sons of Israel, Joshua wrote on the stones a copy of the law of Moses, which Moses had written. All Israel, the stranger as well as the native born among them, with their elders and officers and their judges, stood on either side of the ark before the Levitical priests who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord. Half of them stood in front of Mount Gerizim, and half of them stood in front of Mount Ebal, just as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded at first to bless the people of Israel. Then afterward, Joshua read all the words of the law, the blessing and curse, according to all that is written in the book of the law. There was not a word of all that Moses had commanded which Joshua did not read before the entire assembly of Israel, including the women and the children and the foreigners who were living among them. So this chapter, it shows the victory of having the Lord on your side and not having that sin in your camp, right? When you leave your sin behind and you have the Lord with you, then you have success. Also, I want us to notice here at the end that the altar was made of uncut or untooled stones. Stones that we had not, chipped out or shaped up or messed with. They are made by God, not by human hands. And then also Joshua rewrote and reread the law to the people to remind them of how important it is to choose blessing and not cursing, to choose to leave their sin behind, to follow God, and to have that success. So this was all a reminder here at the end of, what had happened before. Remember, they had been defeated at Ai previously because they had sinned, and now here they were victorious because they had the Lord with them. And it's very important that we remember that and understand that. So I want to thank you for listening. Hope you have a wonderful day. May God bless you and keep you safe. And remember, God loves you.